Hi there, and welcome to this video about using nested for loops. Now sometimes when we create our programs and we use loops, sometimes when we're running through each iteration of a loop, if you like, each time through a loop, we then need another loop to happen. Okay, so for instance we might have a loop that runs 5 times, and for each time through that loop, each of the 5 times, we need another loop to happen that maybe does something 10 times. So effectively the thing happens 50 times in total. Well, let's have a look at a sort of a simple example of this. Now I've been set a challenge maybe, okay, where I am trying to create shapes with asterisks on my screen. But I can only ever use within one run of a loop, okay, I'm only ever allowed to GFX.WRITE only one asterisk at a time. So we're going to use loops to try and do this. So let's sort of take an example. We want to create a square asterisk or a set of asterisks 3 by 3. So 3 on each line and 3 lines. So let's sort of see how that might work. Now I've set myself up a loop here already, okay, with the loop counter, and I'm setting that between 1 and 3. It's effectively step 1 like that, but because it is step 1 I don't have to put the step in, it's just automatically 1. Okay, so loop counter is 1 to 3. Now that's going to control each line of my 3, okay, so each line of asterisk, but within each line I need to create 3 asterisks, but I'm only allowed to print 1 at a time. So what I'm going to do here is create another loop. Okay, so I'm going to do a nested loop, and what I'm going to do there is I'm going to call this the nested loop, or what's sometimes called the inner loop. Okay, so this is my nested or inner loop. Okay, and sorry, I need that to be counter. Okay, and so inside of my one loop here. Okay, so for nested loop counter equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're going to do inside of there a GFX.WRITE line, and I'm going to use an asterisk, and I'm probably going to put space after that to separate them out a little bit. Okay, now after each line, so I do my set of 3 with this loop, and after that I'm going to want to do a new line so that I go to the next line. Alright, now let's actually have a look at how that works. Okay, problem found near that line there, so let's just have a quick look. Oh yeah, I didn't close my brackets. Okay, and let's run this, and we'll find, yep, so we've got a set of 3 asterisks on each line. Now let's actually have a look at how that actually works. Okay, so if I actually run this again with the debugger this time. Okay, let's see if I can move this over and see if I can see both. We won't be able to quite see it all, but we'll do okay. So if I run each highlighted line, we can see we go into the main outer loop here. Okay, and then we go into the inner loop. Okay, so we do our first asterisk there, second asterisk, third asterisk. So it's run that loop now from 1 to 3. Okay, then it goes back up and sees if it needs to do it a 4th time. The loop says no because it's set from 1 to 3. So it does the new line there, goes back to the outer loop. The outer loop moves to the next value, which is 2, and then we're back into the inner loop again. So we do those 3, and then new line again, back up, set the loop counter to 3, which means we carry on and do the last one through, back into the inner loop, which again runs 3 times, does those 3 asterisks. Okay, checks that, goes to the new line, and then we're done. Okay. Right, so that's how a nested loop works. Now let's just go in and actually see if we can make this a little bit better, our code. Now at the moment this is setting the size of the square with this value here, 3, which we've repeated. So what happens if I said, well, let's do square size. instead. Okay, and up here I can say let's use that. Let square size equal, let's say 5, and I'm going to replace these values with square size. Okay, save and check. Okay, and we can see we've got 5 lines of 5 there. Okay, if I go back to edit the source and change that to 10 in one go. Okay, and we can see we end up with 10 by 10. So because we've used a loop, and notice how, I mean that last one was 10 by 10, that's 100 asterisks, but I've only got one GFX.WRITE that does it. Okay, very small program that does this. Okay, but it's all down to the power of loops. Okay, so because I used a variable here to set the size of the square, I can use that in both of my loops here to try and be a bit more clever about how I make my program more useful. Okay, so that's a little sort of introduction to using for loops in uSource, and nested ones at that.